talking about our training, and we are all training for Chicago Marathon, among other races in between now and then. But Chicago, some news coming out with their change in their guaranteed entry time standards. And I've seen a lot of chit chat and back and forth and hoots and hollers on it. And I don't know. I thought we could talk about it a little bit and get some thoughts and perspectives. And I don't know. What do you got? Where are you guys at with this so far?
I see why they did it. I mean, everybody's getting faster, times are getting faster. We saw the Olympic times, their trials, qualifier times had to drop. So I figured other races would kind of do the same. You had people ticked off last year because there were too many time qualifiers. So they had to just enter the normal lottery. So, I mean, I know why Chicago had to change it, but I didn't expect the times that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, we've talked about it on here before. It's really a testament to the sport, right? That they have to do this. Boston had to drop their times as well. But despite dropping their times, but for this is speaking about Boston anyway, despite dropping their times, they do increase their participants every year. So they're dropping their times, but they're getting more people. And Chicago, I think, is doing the same thing. I mean, they're dropping, like you said, Carolyn, last year, some people were mad that so many guaranteed time qualifiers got in. So they dropped the times a little bit to open the door up for maybe more lottery runners. I don't know. But just the fact that we can drop these times, that we're seeing this kind of trend, again, it's a testament to the sport. More people are coming to the sport of running, and they're taking it seriously enough to the point that they are getting faster. They are trying to better themselves. They're trying to better their lives, and they're trying to better their abilities. So, people are naturally getting faster.
Yeah, I did a content video on it just a couple days ago, but that's exactly it. Like the sport is growing. Yes, they can add more runners to it, and they do to an extent, but there is a limit, right? Like they can only safely accommodate X amount of runners. And so what's the next logical step? Well, you're not gonna cut out, charity programs, right? That's not gonna happen. You're gonna keep those. The lottery program, like, yeah, you could technically reduce the number of lottery entrants and not change the qualifying times, but that's not fair, right?
Yeah.
So you do the math, you calculate, you look at the times that are being submitted over the last 5 years, and you say, okay, what do we need to adjust these to? Because these are the times that are being entered as qualifying times. And that's the next logical thing. It's the evolution of the marathon majors, because this isn't the first time Chicago's done this, right? Boston's done it who knows how many times, New York, all of them. I think where people are upset is Chicago, up until this point, was the easiest marathon to get into. Of the six majors, I should say. Of the six majors, it was the easiest to get into because their standards were the most lax to get into. Now Chicago has kind of caught up. They're kind of on par with the rest. I would, I've heard some people say, "Oh, well, now it's harder than Boston." Well, it really isn't. Boston doesn't have a lottery. Chicago
Right.
does, right?
Exactly.
Like, you still have a better chance of getting into Chicago, even if the times are 5 minutes faster per age group. And I don't know what the size is either, but
So
it's
for Chicago's the third biggest marathon in the world. And that's just, 40,000 people. That was a couple years ago. So you got New York City and Chicago are two of the top three biggest in the world, and Boston's the one that doesn't have a lottery you have to qualify for. So again, Chicago's still going to be fairly easy to get in. I don't want to say easy, but the lottery is going to be more open than it
Yep.
was. You're going to have less people trying to get in on automatic times.
Well, and then people keep saying, well, they need to do a lottery for Boston. They need to do a lottery for Boston. I will tell you right now, it's never going to happen. And the reason why it's never going to happen is because they're never going to change the course, at least the start and the finish of Boston. And that start of Boston is limited in space. That's why they make it as challenging as they make it to get in, and they make it this marquee race, because they are maxed out essentially onto how they can safely start that race with those runners. Chicago, again, a little bit more flexibility, right? New York, a little bit more flexibility. Boston's never going to have a lottery. That's my prediction. You're hearing me. Not in my lifetime. I don't think it'll happen because of that reason.
Well, and I don't think it should either. I mean, I think that, not to sound elitist here or anything, but there needs to be one major marathon that requires you to do, some work, right? Like we talked about, you mentioned something earlier today. I know it wasn't on here, but influencers in Boston, and I know that there's been discussion on whether influencers should be invited to Boston. And flat out answer is no. Now, if they do the work and they qualify or they do a charity, then go do your influencer thing. Sure, go whatever you did to get there. But, I think Boston needs to stay that kind of one that you have to work for. And not saying that people don't do the work, right? Like anybody who runs a marathon does the work, right? But I think that one of them needs to stay, qualify only.
Yeah. And I'm all for the influencer piece with boundaries, kind of like you were just saying, like with caveats to it, right? And my caveat would be, if you're going to allow influencers, don't just randomly throw out invites to influencers and say, hey, you're in Boston. Create an influencer, you know, program and maybe have 50 people that are allowed in, and still make a standard for that program, whatever that standard may be. You have to hit this time plus your influencer standard. Again, I don't, some big number, right? Whatever it is. But regardless, to me, the influencer piece should be such a small number that it's like nibbles of a big pot, right? 25 influencers and whatever it is. But yeah, to your point, I do think Boston needs to stay, and it will, as the elitist race, right? The race that everyone dreams of doing, and qualifying for too. Getting in one way, but those qualifying standards, they're not going to get easier. They're going to keep getting harder, and that gives us something to chase for those people that have the ability to chase those too.